Hey everybody, how are you? I want to make this podcast or this little voice note all about distractions. And I want to start off by just telling you a little bit about a pattern that I notice. And I notice this pattern much more in like women who come to me, clients who now I would say I probably have about 65, 70% of the people who work with me one on one are women compared to men. So that could also be something to do with it. But it's a pattern I recognize nonetheless. And the pattern is this: this person will come to me. They're at a point in their life where they have, say, they are leaving a relationship or they're about to leave a relationship, and we'll go through that process. They'll get free. They'll get clear on what they want to do. They'll start to make plans to do these things. They'll start to make plans to do the thing that they've always wanted to do, the thing that they can really sort of feel is their natural calling. And and as they're beginning to make plans, and the first couple of steps into making these plans, they'll suddenly another person, another potential love interest, will come into their orbit, and this is very predictable. It's something that happens repeatedly. I see it all the time. And this person who comes into their orbit quite often has some interesting qualities. These qualities are that maybe they are particularly free, maybe they are exciting, maybe they sort of inhabit some of the qualities that my client is really trying to boost in their own life. And without giving advice to my client, I always say be really, really careful because this seems like a test to me. This seems like it doesn't seem like it's your soulmate. It doesn't seem like this is the love of your life. This seems like a test on whether you are really committed to what you want to do in this life or not. And quite often, what happens, because of course we don't listen to advice, and of course there's no point us listening to advice, as well, because we have to. The way we learn really is by experience the thing. And quite often what happens is they'll dive into the relationship. It'll last 3 to 6 months. And on the other side of it, they'll eventually, from this point of just exhaustion and things not working, will come back to the original dream. So I want to talk about this idea of distractions and tests. And this one example that I just gave there is really just an anecdotal thing, but it's useful and can be applied to everything in our lives. And especially right now, when we are being heavily distracted by one of the most compelling events that you can imagine, which is a war involving lots and lots of countries. And not to sort of not to sort of speak discompassionately about people whose lives are being lost and people who are hurting and suffering because of this. But I just want to say that we have to be very careful to not get blown off course by what's happening in the world right now. If you are in a process of change, if you are about to launch something, if you are about to make big decisions in your life, it is so important that you do not allow what's happening globally distract you, because the changes that you want to make in your life are even more important than this. So, sorry. One way of kind of understanding a little bit the gamification of the universe is to just to imagine that you have a divine spark inside of you. Now, that divine spark can be anything. And I'd say if you have difficulty with the word divine, if you have difficulty with the word God, then really just um I think a kind of a useful way to look at this is it's just a name, it's just a term to describe the general shape of something that we can't possibly know, this mystery, right? And so, but what we have inside us, and I think you understand this through meditation, you understand it through recognizing the synchronicities by feeling your soul's purpose, your intuition, and so on and so forth. This is like our inner divine spark. This is a part of us that is connected, or what I always say is is in the earth, but is not of the earth. It's the part of you that was here before you were born and will be here after you're born. Um, and we can recognize this. We recognize it when we're very still. We recognize it when we connect to intuition. We recognize it when we are operating from our heart. And and all around that divine spark is a web of distraction and confusion. And these are elements, and this is the game part of this life. There are these elements. You could call it the defense if you want. And their role is to plant seeds of doubt, to plant limits. You might recognize this like when you get an idea. And I always know this too. Whenever I get an idea, I have to stay loyal to that first idea because I know that after the first idea, there will be an onslaught of limiting thoughts. So the idea will be something like, I'm going to write a song. And then I know that within minutes, before I've even picked up a guitar or engaged in the process, that this barrage of negative thoughts and limits will come my way. Distractions will come my way. I'll suddenly find myself washing the dishes instead of playing the guitar. This is the game of life. We are trying to become people who connect to the initial thought. That's the divine inspiration. And then don't get distracted. It's very, very difficult to do. But what we're noticing, or what you might notice right now, is that everything that's happening at a global scale, Epstein, the environment, the war, migration, cost of living crises, and so on and so forth, they are huge distractions. And what the role of those distractions is the exact same role. This is as above, so below. As the personal is also the collective. The role of these distractions is the exact same role as that little voice in your head that says, "Oh, don't do that. You'll make a tit of yourself," or "Don't do that. You'll make a fool of yourself." Right? And and we have to stay true. You have to stay true to the original vision. One of the things that I always say and always try to believe is whenever things feel chaotic in my personal life, if for example, machinery is breaking, machinery, I sound like I work in a factory or something. I mean, like if my motorbike doesn't start, or say, for example, I drop something in the kitchen, or even like when my body feels some sort of pain, or if I notice that there's something going on with like relationships around me and friends, when I notice chaos in my field, I always bring it back to me, and I kind of go, okay, well, what could this possibly mean for me? Where am I missing out? What am I doing? Where is there a great piece of learning for me? And one thing that I've recognized throughout the years is that when there is a lot of turbulence around me, that it is always a sign that I'm about to do something new. I'm like on the point of a breakthrough, you could say. And I think that's what we can look at with the world right now and everything that's happening at a global scale. It's the exact same, but magnified, amplified. It's the exact same as when you notice chaos in your personal life. This is chaos in our collective lives. And it's symbolic of a dramatic change, a huge change that we're about to go through. So, and that change isn't going to be top down. That change is going to be inside of you, and that change is going to be your kind of magic, right? Your ability to not go into negativity, to not go into pessimism, to not allow all this kind of smoke and distraction to pull you away from the creation of the dream life that you're intended to create. You are a vision holder for the future. I think it's really important that you remember that. Like every action you do is so important. What happens when we get distracted by global affairs like this is that they make us feel like our issues, our themes, our problems don't amount to a hill of beans. We begin to feel insignificant. And this is the game. The game of life is to at least the negative aspect of life. The game of life is to make you feel insignificant, to make you feel, oh, well, it doesn't matter what I do. But the reality is the world that we live in is connected at such a kind of a small level that everything you do is connected to everything that can possibly be done. The world that we live in, the energetic field that we exist in, is deeply interconnected, and your actions, even the smallest of actions, are so important. And this is where distraction, we have to like really begin to look on distraction as an enemy. Distraction is the thing that like dims your light because you have no idea, but say perhaps you were working on setting boundaries with family. Perhaps you were working on forgiveness. Maybe you were working on letting go. Maybe you were working on just like creating a TikTok reel. And then you see everything happening in Iran and the Straits of Hormuz and so on and so forth. And you go, oh, it doesn't matter. And I just really want to make this recording to remind you that it does matter. And it's more important than ever. It's more important than ever that you begin to honor the divine spark inside of you, your magical intuition, to connect to that, to honor it, to launch it into the world. Now more than ever, it's so important. And we can never really quantify how important it is. And I think it's not really for us to know and be able to see how important it is. But staying true and realizing that the vision you carry inside of you, the vision that you're holding, has ramifications for everything. Yeah, so and there are a couple of concepts that sort of speak to this idea. One is the Buddhist idea of dependent origination, and this idea sort of holds that nothing exists independently. Every phenomenon arises sort of independence upon different conditions. So in that, with that sort of philosophy, with that concept, it's sort of you smiling at a stranger um has a ripple effect that changes the world. The Stoics too, they had an idea called sympathia, and it's the idea that the cosmos is this single living organism and all its parts are in sympathy with one another. And what I think this does is it encourages me anyway to never feel insignificant and to recognize that whatever I do ripples, even if I can't see where it's rippling to. Um, you've also probably heard of a thing called the butterfly effect in chaos theory, and it's this idea that it's a butterfly flapping its wings can causes a hurricane, you know, and it's just sort of, so it's we're talking about these kind of deterministic systems that are radically sensitive. And understanding that the simplest thing you do, maybe it's forgiving someone, maybe it's liberating yourself from a situation, maybe it's just stepping more into your authenticity, maybe it's launching your business. All of these things are the most important things. We're often led to believe that the most important things are what rulers do, are what military does, are what these machines of war do. And I think in a time of war, it's really important that we can just come back to what we want to do and remember that what you do when it comes from the heart is hugely significant and hugely important. Um, so please don't be distracted. All right. That's what I wanted to say. Love you all and take care and stay with your dreams.